What's up, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Between the Eers. I'm Schuyler. That is Christopher Hall. This episode is presented by West Virginia on SI, and it is time to dive in a little bit about the Kansas Jayhawks in the matchup with them this Saturday. West Virginia, of course, coming off the 38-34 loss against Pitt. It's time to bury that thing, put it in the past, never to be talked about again until next year when the backyard ball returns to Morgantown. But Chris, pair of 1 and 2 teams coming into this one. Hate to use the word desperate, but it feels like that is kind of the feeling for both of these teams going into this one. It's a Big 12 opener. So win or lose, it's not the end of the world in the grand scheme of things, but you want to start off with a good taste in your mouth. And this is a good chance for West Virginia to do so at home. But it is kind of an eerie feeling here, right? Like 2 years ago, you lose in heartbreaking fashion to Pitt. You come home, think, we finally have Kansas coming in and kind of catch a break. This was before we really knew what Kansas was going to be under Lance Leipold. And what do you know? The Jayhawks come in and roll out of Morgantown with an overtime win. And hopefully that's not the same story that we're going to be talking about this Saturday. So let's just start first things first with this Kansas team. 1 and 2, like I said, they've lost 2 weeks in a row to Illinois and UNLV. What has been the overall feeling for this team on your side of it?
Uh, they lost their offensive coordinator. We talked about it
Yeah.
going into Penn State, how good he was. And it's obviously showing. And, in college football, you can obviously at the NFL too, but coaching matters. I mean, you only got these kids a short time a week, and these coaches have got to get these kids in the right situations immediately. So when you don't have that offensive coordinator that kind of made that click, you're starting to see the result. Damn, 6 interceptions through 3 games. Not probably what Jayhawk fans expected, especially against Illinois and UNLV. Of course, UNLV are some,
They're
historically some
scrappy, apparently. I mean,
they're
2-0
road
against the
dogs.
Big 12.
They are road dogs, but uh, they've only scored 20 and 17 against anyone that's in the FBS.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the offense is not clicking. And you basically just hope that it doesn't start clicking against West Virginia defense. And the opportunities arise, you got to take advantage of those balls that's going to come right to you. You can't drop the pass. Kind of bit West Virginia in that Pitt game, dropping a couple of interceptions. We saw it last year at Penn State where they dropped a couple of interceptions that could have turned the game around. So yeah, it's hey, if you defense, you got to feel kind of good. Like, hey, they're not clicking, but Daniels he's talented. We've seen what he could do. He put on a show last time in
Electric.
Morgantown. Like, do not let them get confidence against you. And that it could happen. It very much could happen, especially when players are backs against the wall. How does West Virginia respond with their backs against the wall? Leopold, he's got a history of getting his teams back on track. Neil Brown, yeah, in a sense he does, but not till later in the season. So it's an interesting matchup with two teams that I think a lot outside of Morgantown thought West Virginia might be 1 and 2 already. I think there was some feeling within those buildings that they could be 3-0 at this point, but it's an intriguing matchup since they're both 1 and 2, and obviously both programs didn't think they would be where they're at right now.
Kansas has played West Virginia fairly well the last few trips here. 23, obviously, or 22, they won. 2020 was the COVID year. They hung around for a little while, if memory serves me, and I think West Virginia ended up pulling away and winning by like 3 scores. But the year before that was the Will Greer year. I believe Will threw like, 2 or 3 interceptions that game, and it was kind of a weird, wacky game that they ended up finding a way to win, but it wasn't pretty by any means. That was kind of a foreshadowing of what would happen the following week against Iowa State out in Ames. But let's do the offense first here against Kansas defense, because I think we could spend an hour on the defense. Um, West Virginia's offense, I mean, like you said in yesterday's episode, like they've done well, but I think there's more in there. I'm in 100% agreement with you there. Like there is some things that I think they're leaving out there. There's some big plays that have been left out there. I think Garrett Green can be a little bit sharper. He's only 59%, I believe, through these first 3 games. They want him to be above that 60% mark. I don't know if there's any one area that they need to focus on in this game. I think they can have success both through the air and on the ground, but your takes on West Virginia's offense against their D.
They've done a pretty good job of not turning the ball over, in a sense.
Yeah.
But
You just
uh,
wipe out the final drive there.
not to be cliche, but you can't hand them possession. Can't give them short field position with a defense that's struggling. So yeah, they got to take care of the ball. One, little concerned. Jaheim White now has two fumbles.
Yeah.
Early in the year, he didn't lose the one last week against Pitt. But you're going to have to continue to find success in the running game. But I think you're going to have to find something to get the passing game a little bit more explosive. They've got some explosive plays on with this receiving group. Bray made a big play last week. Cole Taylor's been great. He's been everything that you expect. But I think they've been playing again too much around the box, whether it's passing, running the ball. There's just been too much at the line of scrimmage. They've been too stacked together with some of these offensive linemen. They need to get more spread out, and I think it'll help Garrett Green. I think one of the issues he's having is everything's just so jammed over the middle, whereas as if they'd spread him out. I think the passing lanes would open up a little bit for him a little better. He's struggling with passes over the middle. I think it's a lot of it because of his height. I mean, when you look at the offensive line, they're all big. Like he's got to pass over those guys, right? And those defensive linemen is going to have their hands up. So probably try to find some passing lanes. You see in the NFL a lot. They just kind of, either left or right tackle. It's almost like they're opening up a running lane. They do it. They did it essentially a lot for Drew Brees in New Orleans. You saw that a lot. So yeah, it's probably a little too technical for college, for this team right now. As young as this whole group is, they got to find some kind of success over the middle. Um, and really, if you can start with Kansas, you can probably start build off that. But offensively, I think it go back to cliche: pound the ball, find what you can, ball control, wear the defense down. I thought they did a good job against that against Pitt. They held the ball for a long time, wore down their defense, and you started to see the success in the second half. So if they can do that against Kansas, I think they'll be fine. But I think you have to play with a little bit more um, fire. You
A
got to
little more
play like
urgency.
your backs against. Yeah, low urgency. Just
Oh, yeah.
you got to play like your back's against the wall. You can't say, "Hey, we're going to win field position. We got to go score." Now, you don't want to put that pressure on them, but at the same time, like guys, you're supposed to be putting up points. Let's go put up some points.
The I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I may be completely off base in saying this, but I'll go back and look it up after. It just doesn't feel like there's been a lot of like deep downfield connections in the passing game, like deep downfield throws. Now they've taken shots, they just haven't been there. They haven't completed them. They had the one obviously to Hudson Clement that got called back against Pitt, but it feels like a lot of the explosive passing plays have been maybe in that like 12 to 15 range, and it's a little bit of yak from the receiver, which is a good thing too. Which that was an area of concern in the first couple of years under Neil Brown's. They couldn't get any yards after the catch. Now they have that, but I want to see more of those shots downfield. And where the hell is Jaden Bray been? Like this is
He
a
just
guy
had a big catch against Pitt. He had
he
like a
did,
44-yard.
but that's what I'm saying. Like they need to get him more heavily involved. These first 3 weeks, he's just kind of been existing. It doesn't feel like he's been a featured piece of this offense. Maybe that's going to come. I don't know. But they did a whole lot of talking in the offseason, in spring, summer, fall camp. It's got to start to come around. I think he's somebody that if they start getting him the ball, he could be a game changer for this offense to really get it turned around. Um, Spinning it over to the other side, we all know about the issues that West Virginia has defensively, but there's not a whole lot of talk about what is going right. And I think the defensive line has kind of proven us over the last couple of games, or I should really just say this game against Pitt, that they have something there. You know, they got to Eli Holstein a number of times. They didn't finish the play, and Neil was 100% correct, and they probably left another 4 or 5 sacks out there. I mean, they had hands on him multiple times, and he just found a way to squirt through and pick up some yardage in the running game. But I think they're getting enough push, they're getting enough pressure. TJ Jackson's a beast. Sean Martin's starting to play a little bit better. That front has to really set the tone, and they've got to continue to ramp up the pressure. In my opinion, I think Jordan Leslie's got to call more blitzes. I'm not too harsh on defensive play calling, but he's got to send more pressure. And I know it's kind of a dangerous territory when your secondary isn't played well, but if those guys if the quarterback has forever to throw, then that's also putting your secondary in a bad position. So I think you've got to get the quarterback in a position where he's got to get the ball out fast. But what do you see in this Kansas offense, and what makes them so dangerous?
Nothing right now. Their offensive coordinator should stay.
True, true. But they do have Devin Neal. Devin Neal's a stud.
And they do have Jaden Davis. They have guys. They have guys. They've got a couple of great receivers. Daniel Hishaw Jr.
He
Is
scored
right
two
behind
tutties
me.
on West Virginia last time they came up here.
Right,
Shaw.
right. So, Luke Grimm, he's been around for a while. He's
Yeah.
making big plays. Like they've got guys. I think defensively, you got to watch blitzing against Kansas team, especially against a guy like Daniels that can recognize it and just run away from it with his speed. They didn't have to bring a lot of pressure against Pitt last week because that defensive line was getting get to him, just sending forward. So, I think with this, you don't want anything to get behind you, right? When it's second 30, don't let the guy get behind you, score a 40-yard touchdown. Kind of sounds simple, but in a sense, there were guys around him. You just, step behind and the pass is on the money. There's not much you can do at that point. But I think you
Yeah.
got to play kind of like that bend don't break style right now, and just kind of send your forward and blitz it very rarely. I think you can disguise a little bit where you're thinking that you can bring a little pressure. But I think right now you just kind of keep everything in front of you. When you got a guy coming in with 6 interceptions, you want to just kind of force him to make the mistake, force him to have to make a play in the red zone. But you got to be careful with that because like I said, there's Devin Neal in the backfield. He can run all over you, so you can't be too much on your heels. You don't want to
Right.
get on your heels. You kind of want to pin your ears back, but they're going to be throwing a lot of different guys out in the secondary. You kind of touched on the offense where, not finding Jay and Bray. I think you can have, too much of a heavy rotation where they're not getting into a rhythm. And you can find that on the defensive end as well, whether it's up front or in the backfield. You can just never get in the flow of the game because there's just so much turnover in the roster there. So, yeah, it's very easy every Monday, right? The Monday morning quarterback to say, "Hey, I would have did this, I would have did that," so on and so forth. But just because Kodoneki's not here or not in Lawrence right now doesn't mean this offense isn't very capable. Just because they've only scored 17, 20 points against FBS opponents doesn't mean that they won't do it against West Virginia. They still have all the playmakers. So I think at the end of the day, just keep it in front of you. And again, you're going to have your offense win the games for you right now until your defense figures it out. So you don't want to say play it safe because you just saw them get 5 sacks against Pitt last week, but at the same time, you don't want to allow your defense, like if the first possession of the game goes for a big touchdown, like, confidence is going to be gone. So I think
Oh,
you
yeah.
just kind of keep things in front of you until
Yeah.
you find that rhythm. Now they do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it gets kind of frustrating, I think, across the country. Like if you watch any game across the country, the opening drives are usually good drives for the offense because they're scripted, so on and so forth. And the defense is just trying to really get a feel for what the offense is going to do. But I think if you can get out early, they did it against Pitt. They've stopped them early against Pitt. But I think if you can do that kind of against Kansas, especially the way they're struggling offense, I think you may have something. But it goes back to the key, kind of the key of the game. Like when there's an opportunity that arises to get an interception or hop on a ball when the ball's on the ground, you got to convert. Got to make sure you get that because that obviously turnovers are game changers. And all of a sudden, when you a group that hasn't created a lot of turnovers, you see one, they can start feeding off of it. So
Yeah.
again, cliche as this stuff sounds, when you see a turnover in front of you, hop on it, and you can kind of start building momentum off that.
One turnover in these first three games, and the only turnover was that botch snap against Penn State. So they haven't
Yeah,
even forced one. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's got to start happening. I mean, Dantes Fagan had one right in his hands. I think they even had maybe another one or another chance at a pick against Pitt, but they've got to do that. The touchdown, the 2nd and 30 touchdown play. I went and did an article on this, but if you go back and watch that play, I mean, Aubrey Burks was like he could have blown that thing up from the very beginning. They ran a little twist action between Sean Martin and TJ Jackson. At least that's what it looked like. I couldn't tell by the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was Sean Martin, TJ Jackson. And when Sean did his action, Aubrey ran straight into his back, which it just blew that whole play up and allowed Eli to get the ball out. If I couldn't really tell from the angle, but it may have looked like Sean overplayed the twist, or maybe it was Aubrey just had the wrong entry point. I don't know. But either way, if Aubrey doesn't get bumped off his course there, he's probably got a sack in his 3rd and 38. So I think that you can
They
find
got 40
ways.
yards, so they still would have got it eventually.
Well, true.
That
But
would that would have been a momentum killer. Getting
yes,
that.
it would have been completely different on 3rd and 38 or 3rd and 40 or whatever, but I like sending those types of blitzes with Aubrey Burks or some guys out of the secondary. Again, you have to be cautious with it because the secondary's played so bad, but you also have to dial up enough because you can't just have the guy standing back there for 7 seconds. But I don't know. I think it's gonna be an interesting game. If you're West Virginia, you're looking at this and you're thinking, man, like this is a great opportunity for our defense to find some confidence because Kansas is struggling. They're turning the ball over. They're not throwing it well. They're running it okay, but they could probably run it even a little bit better. And then if you're Kansas, you're looking at it the same way. You're looking like, my goodness, this is a great opportunity for our passing game to get going and for us to start scoring some more points. So something's got to give here. Whether Kansas is going to figure it out offensively or West Virginia's going to find some answers defensively, someone's going to walk out of Saturday feeling a little bit better about themselves after the Big 12 opener. And
Got to say this about the defense.
yeah, yeah.
They stuck. They did really well in the running game against Pitt. Like
Yes,
really, really well.
absolutely shut out
Des,
that their number one back.
Desmond Reed, back-to-back 100 games, who's leading the country in rushing,
Had like one really
shutting
good
down.
play, and that was
So
about it.
it's not all bad defensively. It's not all bad. It just the plays that are bad are obviously glaring because
It's not
really bad.
it's not 2013 just yet.
No, not yet. I don't think it'll be that bad. You've seen that. I mean, I know it hasn't shown, but you've seen progress defensively, and you saw in the second half. Again, they're capable.
Yeah.
You just Neil Brown. I There was so much talk. Consistency. It's a thing you'll hear across country. Consistency. Got to be consistent every possession. Yes, there's other 11 guys, scholarship players on the other side that's trying to do the same thing, but when you can prove you can do it, just continue to do it and play to the end.
Yeah, and I think Neil had a good comment about, just moving on from the Pitt game, like they're going to take his lead. So whether or not he's showing signs of like moving on from that Pitt game and bouncing back, that'll determine whether the team does. And obviously I think he will, but again, you're still talking about 18 to 22, 23-year-old kids. You have no idea what you're going to get on that Saturday. You just hope that your bunch of 18 to 23-year-olds are more locked in and focused than the other team's 18 to 23-year-olds. That's basically what this boils down to. But that'll do it for today's episode. West Virginia and how they beat Kansas. We will be back with the Walkthrough Game Day show tomorrow as Eugene and I break down the matchup, make our picks, talk a little bit about Neil Brown and that whole situation. We'll dive into all that goodness on the Walkthrough Game Day show. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Between the Eers. For Christopher Hall, I'm Schuyler Callihan. Make sure you hit the subscribe button here on our YouTube page at West Virginia on SI and give us a follow on X at SI_WVU. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here for the Game Day show.